Mosaic, a daily news program from Link TV, presents a selection of news reports from independent and state-controlled broadcasters from throughout the Middle East.
وإلى موضوع آخر فقد أعلن وزير الداخلية الأردني.
The Jordanian Interior Minister, Eid al-Fayez, announced that one prisoner was killed and 15 security officers were wounded in early morning riots in the Kafka prison, north of Amman. Witnesses said that the clashes occurred when a number of prisoners resisted security officers as they were inspecting one of the prison cells looking for drugs and sharp instruments, according to the prison administration.
معلومات وردت لإدارة السجن.
There were security reinforcements at the Kafka prison north of the capital Amman to put down the riots that were instigated by Islamist prisoners. The security patrols and anti-terrorism forces reinforced their presence in the area in anticipation of any emergencies. Many ambulances came to the place to transfer the wounded.
In one of the cells, one of the prisoners resisted an inspection by the security agents. They used hot water, chemical substances, as well as sharp objects to resist the search. Clashes erupted between the general security officers and prisoners. I believe that 15 security officers were injured.
According to security sources, the riots erupted following attempts to search the cells of Islamists. Prisoners surprised guards by taking a number of them hostage, thus beginning a new chapter similar to the events of last month in the Juwaidi prison.
This is the second occurrence within nearly 1.5 months. It indicates a major security breakdown in the prisons and a challenge by the prisoners to the laws and the system. Unfortunately, the security agency has not been able to learn anything from the first riot. It has not taken sufficient measures to control the acts of dangerous prisoners who are described as being on the list of the most dangerous prisoners in the world.
These riots came after a press conference held on Wednesday at the headquarters of the Jordanian Vocational Guild to discuss the conditions of prisoners in 6 reform and rehabilitation centers in the country.
We believe there are some negative aspects in the way that prison authorities treat prisoners, especially who belong to the so-called Islamic movements. Since the riots that took place in the Juwaida Rehabilitation Center, there has been a systematic harassment of the prisoners and their visiting families. This is a source of concern to us.
This problem is deadlocked between the government and the Islamic prisoners, who demanded that their prison conditions be improved. However, prison-related regulations may hinder the government's ability to compromise at a time when both sides feel that they do not have sufficient guarantees to make concessions. This is not the first time prisoners hold security personnel hostage, and it may not be the last amidst the ongoing tensions between the Jordanian prison authorities and the Islamist prisoners. Nasser Shadid, Abu Dhabi Television, Amman. The United Iraqi Alliance postponed resolving disagreements over its Prime Minister candidate Ibrahim Jafari. Sources within the United Iraqi Alliance said that the motive behind the postponement is the hope that some would change their positions concerning Jafari's nomination. The same sources revealed that some members of the United Iraqi Alliance insist that Jafari's nomination happened according to a democratic process that must be respected. Others believe that it is not a good idea to bypass some parties that still refuse Jafari's nomination by turning to the Iraqi parliament. Meanwhile, the Iraqi Interior Ministry said that 13 people were killed and many others were injured when a booby-trapped car exploded in a market.
While Iraqi politicians are preoccupied with attempts to find a solution to the political impasse on who should be the prime minister candidate, the security situation continues to deteriorate. Killings and kidnappings are a major problem in many Iraqi cities, the latest of which was the killing of 6 Iraqis and the kidnapping of 4 others. Also, it's now common to find dead bodies in many Iraqi cities, the latest of which was the discovery of 5 dead bodies. The Iraqi Interior Ministry said that an employee in the Health Ministry was killed and another was injured by armed individuals who opened fire on their car while they were on their way to work in Yarmouk in western Baghdad. An American soldier was killed and an Iraqi civilian was injured when a roadside bomb exploded as an American patrol unit was passing by the Mansour area in western Baghdad. In northern Iraq, a police officer was injured by a roadside bomb explosion as a police vehicle was passing near the Turkish embassy in the Waziriya area. Also, 7 Iraqi civilians were injured when a mortar shell fell on a building that belongs to the Trade Ministry in Al Dura area.
The explosion was extremely strong. It shook the whole area. People were burning.
The Iraqi police of Mahmoudiyya announced that a member of the Commando Maghawir forces was killed and another was injured when an explosive device went off. Clashes between Iraqi forces and armed individuals in Fallujah killed a woman and injured 6 people, including a child. In the north, 2 civilians were killed while they were transporting basic goods to the Iraqi army in Hawija area in western Kirkuk.
وضعت قوات الشرطة والقوات شبه العسكرية الباكستانية في حالة
The Pakistani police were put in a state of alert after the suicide explosion in Karachi city that killed 60 people. Families buried their dead in a group funeral procession that was transformed into a Sufi religious gathering. The perpetrators' identities and motives are still unknown.
هوية مرتكبي الاعتداء ولا دوافعهم.
The Pakistani security received yet another blow when it failed to stop a huge explosion that shook Karachi city and hit the Sufis who were celebrating the birthday of the Honorable Prophet. The horrific explosion killed 60 people, but according to medical sources, the number is subject to increase because many of the injured are in critical condition. Some of the injured told their stories about what happened.
We were standing up during the celebration when we heard a loud explosion. I was injured and woke up in the hospital. I was close to the stadium. Then all of a sudden a strong explosion happened. At the time I did not know what it was. I was injured and transported here.
The horrific explosion in Karachi did not only harm the people that were participating in the celebration, but also destroyed the image of the Pakistani security apparatus. Political observers also saying that the explosion targeted Pakistan's economy.
I believe that this attack targeted the stability of Pakistan and the freedom of its people. It comes as the Pakistani economy was growing at a rate of 8%.
The Karachi explosion targeted a Sufi religious gathering, a group known to take part of the sectarian conflict which has traumatized the country. Spokesman from the United Religious Coalition, which is opposed to Musharraf's government, said that the explosion is the result of an international conspiracy against Pakistan. He also blamed the explosion on security failure by the Pakistani government.
There are no indications that religious persons or groups are responsible for this explosion. We believe that it was caused by an international conspiracy against Pakistan. In my opinion, the explosion reflects the failure of Musharraf's policy. He expressed his opposition to political movements on many occasions, which only created a conducive atmosphere for such attacks.
Regardless whether the explosion was caused by foreign hands or by certain policies, all Pakistani people will suffer the consequences of such horrific explosion. This kind of explosion not only affects the country's security, but it also deprives it from foreign investments. The Karachi explosion is one of the biggest that shook the Pakistani cities. This time, it targeted the Sufis, who are known for not being involved in sectarian conflict. This indicates that the perpetrator's objective was not to target a certain religious group, rather to target Pakistan's security and stability. For a Madar program, Jamal Ismail, Abu Dhabi Television, Islamabad.
Lebanon's brutal war erupted exactly 31 years ago, but nearly 15 years after the fighting ended, Lebanese are still trying to come to terms with the war's consequences, as many former warlords still enjoy popularity as politicians. Let's take a look back at the events which marred the cedar nation. On the morning of April 13, 1975, unidentified gunmen fired on a church in the Christian East Beirut suburb of Ain al-Rumaini, killing 4 people, including 2 Maronite phalangists. Later that day, phalangists led by the Jmayils killed 27 Palestinians traveling on a bus in Ain al-Rumaini going to Tel Zatar, Palestinian camp. Syrian troops invaded Lebanon in June and soon became the strongest party in the country. 3 months later, following a Libya-brokered ceasefire, Ilyas Sarkis wins a Syrian-controlled presidential election. On March 14, 1978, Israeli troops invade southern Lebanon. In April of 1981, a ceasefire in southern Lebanon is brokered by the USA between Israel, Syria, and the PLO. But just 2 months later, Israel invades Lebanon once more and enters Beirut. On September 14th, President-elect Bashir Gemayel is killed. The following day, Israeli troops move into Beirut, and hours later, the phalangists get help from Israeli troops to close off the Sabra and Shatila districts of Beirut and commit a massacre of the Palestinian inhabitants of the area. In September 1983, Israeli troops withdraw from the Shuf region, and the Phalange armed faction and the Lebanese army moves in, resulting in a war between them and the PLO Druze alliance. Days later, a ceasefire is brokered between the fighting parties. At the start of 1984, the Lebanese army and the Lebanese forces attack Shiite suburbs of West Beirut. This results in fighting between the army and the Lebanese forces and the Amal Druze alliance. In 1987, fighting between Amal and Druze militias break out in West Beirut. In April of 1988, fighting between Amal and Hezbollah in southern Lebanon erupts, lasting for nearly 2 months. On September 22nd, Michel Aoun forms a military government following the parliament's failure to elect a new president. In May 1989, Aoun declares a liberation war against Syria. Months later, the Taif Accords are agreed upon in Saudi Arabia, signing off the end of the war, which sees the light in September a year later. On November 5, 1989, Nourine Ma'awad is elected president by the parliament. He is assassinated less than 2 weeks later. Days after, Ilyas Hraoui is elected president. In October, following an air and ground campaign, Syrian troops defeat Aoun and his soldiers, marking the end of the 16 years of civil war. On the 22nd of May 1991, Hraoui and Hafez al-Assad of Syria signs a treaty of cooperation between the 2 countries, offering Syria an iron fist over all aspects of Lebanon's sovereignty. Syrian troops withdrew just a year ago, following the assassination of former Premier Rafiq Hariri. 30 years on, Lebanon is still trying to keep its head above water.
The United Nations confirmed that any talks between UN officials and the new Palestinian government will be subject to restrictions. The Hamas-led government criticized the UN's initiative, describing it as a bad decision that lacks logic and reason. According to UN officials, the organization has instructed its relief agencies not to hold talks with Hamas leaders and to limit contacts with Palestinian officials. The United Nations Relief and Work Agency, UNRWA, confirmed that the countdown has begun for a human catastrophe to unfold in the Gaza Strip. Cutting off financial aid to Hamas coincided with ongoing Israeli military operations in the Gaza Strip. The Palestinian President Mahmoud Abbas Abu Mazen and his Prime Minister Ismail Haniyeh expressed concern over the seriousness of the situation in Gaza.
Thousands of local residents in the Gaza Strip took part in a funeral procession for Hadil Gubin, a 4-year-old girl killed in an Israeli mortar attack south of Gaza. A mortar attack targeting a residential area south of the Gaza Strip injured nearly 12 local residents. Israeli military attacks have killed 20 Palestinians and injured dozens of others since last Friday. Israel escalated its war campaign with mortar attacks and airstrikes against the Palestinian people after Hamas ascended to power. According to Hamas officials, the objective of this Israeli escalation is to mount pressure on the Islamic movement for more concessions and to compel it to recognize Israel and honor previous agreements.
The Israeli occupation forces continue to pound civilian targets in the Gaza Strip using heavy artilleries and mortar shelling. This premeditated and unprovoked escalation against the Palestinian people is an act of terrorism on the government level. The objective of this Israeli escalation is to bring the Palestinian people to their knees and pressure the Hamas-led government into giving more political concessions.
This Israeli military and security escalation coincided with Israeli and international financial pressure on the new government. Hamas is in dire financial need to improve the lives of 4 million Palestinians living in the West Bank and the Gaza Strip. However, Hamas inherited a huge budget deficit of $1.3 billion from the former Fatah-led government. In addition, Israel held tax revenues due to the Palestinian Authority. The United States and the European Union also suspended financial aid to the Palestinian government. Salaries, which reflect a pay increase of 40%, are currently estimated at $118 million a month, compared to only $48 million a month 3 years ago.
As we started to distribute food to local residents in the Gaza Strip, we had to stop due to the violence. Times are tough in Gaza, and the UNRWA is very concerned about the general situation there.
Many countries, including Russia, believe that cutting off financial aid to the Palestinians in light of Hamas's victory is wrong. However, Moscow believes that Hamas must fulfill the demands of the International Quartet and recognize Israel before sitting at the bargaining table. Hamas's supporters contend that the Islamic movement will do everything in its power to prevent the collapse of its new government in light of this financial pressure and military escalation. Hamas ascended to power after its landslide victory in the parliamentary elections. A number of critics believe that Hamas must find other political plans and solutions in order to break this Israeli and international siege, which started to finalize slowly but surely.
The
Hamas representative in Lebanon, Osama Hamdan, told NBN that there has been much progress in the effort to create a united delegation that would include the PLO and other coalition factions to negotiate with the Lebanese government regarding the Palestinian file. He believes that the 6-month deadline that was set at the National Dialogue Conference is meant for research, not for pressure.
A month has passed since the National Dialogue Conference made its decision regarding the Palestinian file and its call to implement the decision in 6 months. However, the Palestinians have yet to finalize their own decision on the matter of forming a united delegation that would take charge of Palestinian-Lebanese dialogue. Inside Palestine, numerous closed-door meetings are being conducted to reach an agreement on this issue. The latest was announced by Hamas representative in Lebanon, Osama Hamdan. He said that most obstacles have been overcome and that a delegation equally made up of all PLO factions will be formed in the coming weeks.
There were obstacles that stood in the way of forming this delegation because of the reality lived by Palestinian refugees in Lebanon. This delegation is aiming to change this reality. There are 4 important concerns in Lebanese-Palestinian dialogue that need to come together to form one major goal. They are political, humanitarian, social, and legal concerns. They must be discussed as they are important for Palestinian factions. Hamas is ready to put these issues on the table to discuss them in detail. Nothing is off limits, and there is no red line. We only reject failure.
Hamdan considers the 6-month period set by the dialogue conference a time not to pressure but to research. He believes that the ideal solution is to form a Palestinian national coalition that will include all different factions and that will support a dialogue delegation agreed upon by everyone. Hamdan pointed out that the Fatah movement now understands that nothing can be accomplished if any faction is absent from the dialogue effort.
We think that our brothers in Fatah now realize that we cannot accomplish anything by marginalizing or eliminating any side, or saying that one side is the only legitimate representative. There must be a delegation in which everyone is represented, and more importantly, a delegation with one agenda.
Hamdan considers the visit of PLFP General Commander Ahmed Jabril in Lebanon a step in the right direction. Jabril is expected to return to Beirut in a week, hoping that media reports will not damage the positive atmosphere created by the visit.
I don't think it is in the Palestinians' best interest to be caught in the middle of Lebanese politics. Neither is it in the best interest of the Lebanese. What we want is official Lebanese support to the Palestinian refugees whose main concern is to return to their homeland. There also needs to be concentrated Palestinian efforts to realize this goal and not to be involved in unnecessary battles.
Secretary of Iran's National Security Council Ali Larijani described his meeting with the IAEA chief as fruitful and said the pair have agreed that Iran's nuclear issue should be reviewed at an expert institution.
Larijani reiterated, as for IAEA's appeal for suspension by Iran of its nuclear activities as a precondition to continue the negotiations, Tehran has fully cooperated with the IAEA, and that any activity at Iran's nuclear power plants are being observed by the agency's cameras installed there. Director General of the IAEA, Mohammad Al-Baradei, for his part, termed the talks the pair held previously as constructive, and added his experts have traced no diversion in Iran's nuclear case from civilian intentions to military purposes. Al-Baradei further said his agency, in cooperation with Tehran, has worked out solutions to questions surrounding Iran's case.
We have ample time to negotiate a settlement by which, as I said, Iran's need for nuclear power is assured, and the concern of the international community is also put to rest. I can tell you, we will continue to work closely with Iran. We'll continue to work closely with Iran on the basis of respect. We'll continue our dialogue with Iran. I'll continue to make my best effort to make sure that this issue is resolved in a peaceful and amicable way.
He pointed out the IAEA seeks explanations from Tehran as part of Iran's efforts to introduce full transparency to the gridlock over its intentions to possess the technology. Al-Baradei also said his trip to Tehran is designed to expedite cooperation by Iran with the IAEA to resolve the remaining issues. The IAEA chief went on to say the next few weeks will see intensive negotiations to shed light on the questions associated with the plan. He concluded today's session saw the two sides exchange views on ways Iran can treat to reach understanding with the international community.
This comes as the 5 permanent members of the UN Security Council met Thursday to discuss Iran's nuclear case. U.S. Envoy John Bolton said after the meeting that all the 5 members took the Iranian move to continue with its uranium enrichment process seriously. He added, quote, "The question of what precisely we can do is something we've got to consult with our capitals about." Earlier in the day, IAEA Chief Mohammad Al-Baradei, in a meeting with the head of Iran's Atomic Energy Organization, Reza Aghazadeh, discussed the remaining issues between Iran and the UN Atomic Watchdog over Tehran's nuclear case.
Talking to reporters at the close of the meeting, Aghazadeh said the pair reviewed IAEA report on Iran's nuclear program, and that Tehran has put forward its point of view on the IAEA performance toward Iran. Prior to his arrival in Tehran, Al-Baradei had stressed his agency is seeking a diplomatic solution to Iran's nuclear program, and that Iran's nuclear technology is for peaceful purposes. He further said Tehran, an NPT signatory, is observing international rules.
Iranian representative to the IAEA said Thursday in Tehran the UN Atomic Watchdog Chief's visit to Iran has paved the way for further cooperation by Iran with the agency. Ali Asghar Soltanieh added the IAEA inspectors have confirmed Iran's success in achieving the nuclear fuel cycle. He reiterated that the IAEA chief, Mohammad El-Baradei's report has proved in 3 years that there have been no diversion in Iran's nuclear activities and that Tehran is committed to its NPT obligations and has not cut off ties with the agency. Iran says its enemies are exhausting all-out efforts to stop the country's progress using psychological war and the language of threat, but that they should realize the Iranian nation stands as stout as mountain and retreat has no room in its progress drive.
Addressing a gathering of people in the northeastern city of Kashmir in Khorasan Razavi province, President Ahmadinejad reiterated the enemies of the Islamic establishment are unable to pose any threat to Iran. He added despite growing pressure by the West, Tehran has succeeded in completing its nuclear fuel cycle at lab scale, thanks to the efforts by the local scientists. Earlier in the day, the president told a host of people in Khalilabad, another provincial town, that national development is a key issue to be dealt with when it comes to practicing justice. The president also underlined the government is firmly resolved to fight unemployment, which, as he stated, is a chief problem battering the country. President Ahmadinejad also cited establishment of basic infrastructures, universities, refineries, and hospitals as the main tasks to be shouldered by his administration.
The Organization for Love and Sincerity in the Moroccan city of Tétouan organized an artistic show for orphan children in honor of the Prophet Muhammad's birthday. Shukri Al-Bakri and Yusuf Al-Ghazi report. The Organization for Love and Sincerity in Tétouan organized an artistic show for orphan children on the anniversary of the Prophet's birthday. Organizers distributed presents to nearly 30 less fortunate children who expressed joy and happiness. They have as much right to enjoy the holiday as other normal children.
I'm very happy to celebrate the Prophet's birthday and Orphans' Day. This event was for a good cause, which has brought joy to orphan children. We celebrated the Prophet's Day. Organizers of the event made us very happy. Thank you.
The anniversary of the Prophet's birthday coincided this year with Orphans' Day. During this time, the Organization for Love and Sincerity holds an annual event to honor orphaned children. It currently sponsors nearly 500 orphan students in the town of Tétouan. The joy of the holiday was compounded by festivities of Orphans' Days.
The anniversary of the Prophet's birthday is not only a religious holiday, but it's also a time to express love and affection to the less fortunate. We need to help those orphan children during and after this anniversary. I do not believe that there is even one person in Morocco who does not feel affection for these children. I hope that we will help these children achieve their goals.
Amen. Helping these less fortunate children needs to continue even after these festivities are over. Celebrations of Orphans' Days will continue until next Friday, and they will end by a charitable event for the benefits of these children.
The views expressed on Mosaic are not those of Link TV or its sponsors, but of the broadcasters themselves. Mosaic is made possible by a grant from the John S. and James L. Knight Foundation, which promotes journalism excellence worldwide and invests in the vitality of 26 U.S. communities, and the William and Flora Hewlett Foundation. Additional support is provided by the Firedoll Foundation and Henry and Virgilia Dakin. This program is brought to you by Link TV for educational and non-commercial use only. For a transcript of this program, to watch streaming video, or for instructions on how to receive Link TV in the United States, visit linktv.org.